how can we help the community? Because we're helping community with businesses. That's, a given. But that other side of it is nonprofits, and they provide such a vital piece of what's happening in our community. And they, a lot of times, are so busy and they're so focused on just making sure that they can carry out the mission and serve the people in the community that they really don't have that time to look at the nonprofit as a business and to make sure it's sustainable and make sure that they are being as efficient as possible.
Today, I had the opportunity to sit down with my business partner, with my mother, with the nonprofit expert herself, Jodee O'Brien. She takes us through a conversation of her history, of her work with nonprofits back up in Iowa through here in Texas, from small to large organization, and even takes us through what the process was like of merging two United Way organizations together. She's got a wealth of knowledge she shares with us here today in this conversation of how to grow and build a successful nonprofit, avoid burnout as an executive director, work on alignment within the boards, and just all around build a better, more impactful, more sustainable nonprofit organization. Check out this full conversation here with Jodee O'Brien. Hey, well, welcome. My name is Dan O'Brien. I'm a senior partner here at ActionCOACH in Central Texas. And I get to sit down with business partner and mother, Jodee O'Brien, talk a little bit about her journey into our ActionCOACH firm and kind of specifically with some things that have been accomplished in the nonprofit world. So excited to be sitting down. Jodee, thank you. Let's start off with just, I don't know, let's just do a like 10,000 foot view, and then we can kind of dive into more specifics or more details on some of the history that you've got. But for those that are checking this out, give us the 10,000 foot view of your background and what brought you into the firm here at ActionCOACH.
So I have been working with or with nonprofits probably the past 30 plus years, because I'm really young. And so I have always just had this passion, even throughout my career in I'd had a consulting and marketing and design, and I worked a lot with nonprofits then as well. And so I have always been involved with nonprofits in some way, shape, or form my whole life. And so when I was leading a merge with United Way of Williamson County and United Way for Greater Austin, it was like an aha moment for me that it was time for me to really, I've always been part of the firm. We've had the firm for almost 13 years now. I've always, as a wife, I've been involved in the business and I just couldn't figure out where I would fit. And during COVID, it was amazing because I was sitting in my office and across the hall, obviously, because of COVID. Andy, our senior partner and coach, was in his office talking to businesses and like, how can we make you guys, how can we make sure that you can pay a living wage and stay afloat during COVID and, making sure that you can really take care of your employees and taking care of your families. And I was in my office talking to nonprofits and really hoping to help them. Like, how can we get through these times? You have more and more services needed because of obviously COVID. But you have to run it like a business. So how can you make sure you have enough money? And what does that look like to continue providing those services? And so it was kind of this aha of, oh, this must be the time when I get through the merge. This is the time for me and Andy to work together, and you as well, and Dr. Hartley, and really be like, how can we help the community? Because we're helping community with businesses. That's, a given. But that other side of it is nonprofits, and they provide such a vital piece of what's happening in our community. And they, a lot of times, are so busy and they're so focused on just making sure that they can carry out the mission and serve the people in the community that they really don't have that time to look at the nonprofit as a business and to make sure it's sustainable and make sure that they are being as efficient as possible. And so in my background, I've worked in several nonprofits where I've been brought in to assist with financial stability, um, board stability, just finding out why there's not enough revenue when the community is growing. And so being able to take all of those pieces of my background and tying it really into these great systems that Action Coach has, and being like, there's the part of me that was like, I guess I should have listened to Andy, duh, because all these systems were in place. And I was thinking I had to rebuild it as the nonprofit leader that I was. So it was just timing.
That's really cool. So let's go back. The How many nonprofits have you been a part of or worked in to date?
Um, I have, I've actually worked in 6 or 7. I have worked with probably 20, 25 nonprofits throughout the years in some capacity, whether it was volunteering or doing marketing work for them, communication work for them.
And for to kind of set the stage, we're talking from nonprofits that I don't know, barely existed from a size standpoint, all the way up to some pretty substantial ones. I mean, I know you just briefly mentioned the United Way in Williamson County, merging that with Austin, that sort of thing. But let's like go all the way back. Let's kind of talk about the your background in getting into nonprofit in the first place. There's so many different options to take in career paths. You can go, not just nonprofit or for profit, but looking at kind of what I'm curious, what drew you to nonprofits over anything else?
I think it was the challenge. So when I was in college, way back when, I had the opportunity to intern at the Red Cross in Waterloo, Iowa. And while I was interning in the communications department, I was hired as the person to design the first HIV/AIDS manual, which, oh my goodness, it's really ugly now. But with the tools we had. Um, so and being able to look at the nonprofits and be able to see that piece of it, which what really excited me is because then I went after college, I got a job in for profit, which was great because I got to build a marketing department. But I always thought the fun part of nonprofit over, like I had marketing friends and I was a public relations person. And so it was like this big, like, who's smarter? Um, and so for me, it was the challenge, and it was fun to see what I could get in the newspaper. Yes, back in the day when we had newspapers, what I could get in the news, in releases, and how much media attention I could get for a cause. And I didn't have to, pay for radio. I didn't have to pay for ads. It was all about the challenge of getting the word out, communicating it to make sure that these services were um, taking place. And I got to do it for free. I didn't work for free, almost for free. It's nonprofit. Um, but to get the word out for free was was cool instead of somebody that goes and buys ad time.
Hmm. So then fast forward a few years, get into a couple nonprofits. At least in my recollection, kind of some very notable ones in the journey over the last decade or
Mhm.
so, from kind of a downtown association to jumping into the United Way, making some waves in each of those. But you kind of got into this whole transformation, transition, kind of really transforming and turning around some of these nonprofits. Um,
Mhm.
how did it come about from the point of being able to get excited about drawing more attention to a cause and things like that, and then shifting to this more transit turnaround type of a thing for nonprofits, and going from we have zero funding to now it's actually there's money in the bank, we're able to serve more because of it. What was the catalyst that led you to that challenge?
Yeah, it was really interesting because it was like 2012 and I was trying to decide what I was going to do with my design and communications business, and somebody came to me and asked me if I would be interested, because I was such a supporter of our community, if I would be interested in looking at our downtown association, the Main Street Community Program, and because they were in need of a lot of stuff. I didn't know how bad it was until I actually got into it. But yeah, it was like I really cared about our community, and so I'm like, yeah, sure, I think that sounds like fun. And as I started to dig into it and realized that there wasn't a business sense behind the organization at the time. And it was a very, it was a working board, one executive director, but they would try to use it as a nonprofit thinking that they didn't want to make any money. So they would go and buy iPads or something at the end of the year so that they wouldn't have extra money on hand, which just totally blew me away. And so it was really a struggling nonprofit. So anyway, I really enjoyed that piece of like, how can I make this nonprofit sustainable and how can I grow this nonprofit? So a lot of it was relationship building and getting to know the community and working with community leaders to say, hey, we are strong enough to run this huge event that's coming through our community, and we want to benefit, because I knew that if we could get this organization strong and stable, and so because of that event and because of all the amazing volunteers and everybody that came together for the event, we were able to have about 2 to 3 year run of finances, cash reserves. There we go, big word for me. The cash reserves, so that the organization could actually now figure out how to continue and how to flourish. And so I was finishing off that piece and I was kind of coming around, and then another nonprofit in the area had seen that. And so they reached out to me and they were like, hey, would you be willing to come and work at our United Way in North Iowa? And I'm like, sure, what's up? They were down to 4 board members and relationships were broken. And so it was like that challenge again for me to be able to like, oh, I got to build relationships. And, it wasn't financially as bad as other organizations. So at least I had some stability there so I could work on the other pieces of it and work on the impact and the way that the grants were um, designated. And so it was like bringing it back in a whole different way and rebuilding the team and the board and getting the board engaged again and really getting it strong. And again, I really look for that next challenge. And it was really fun because I also had a community impact director that I really was enjoying mentoring and helping her learn more about the nonprofit world. And so when I decided to move on and get out of the snow, and that's when we came to Texas, I was super excited to hear that she was able to get the role of CEO after I left. And so I came here, and
Very
it
cool.
kind of was, yeah, it's kind of the same thing.
So I want to pause and just kind of walk back because there are two different situations that you outlined, kind of two different nonprofits at very different points in their life cycle. And I think there's some cool stuff to highlight in this journey. So I want to go back to the Main Street organization, and I want to kind of dive in a little bit more to like what was it that you had to change and shift in that organization to put it in the position that you left it in?
Mm.
From, what were the immediate things you needed to change about its financial structure, to the relationships on the board, to, I don't know, maybe even just um, the perspectives of the board members in what the nonprofit could be. If you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about like what was it that you actually had to go in and do in that nonprofit to get it to the point of success.
Yeah, I think the big thing was just to get everybody on the same page of what the purpose and the mission and vision of the organization was. And so a lot of that was board work and working with the current board and finding out where we had holes in the board or where we needed to shift the actual board members. and then also the mindset of the board and of what the nonprofit really is. It's, that to get them to understand that it's a business.
Hmm.
So that was the first real step of doing board alignment and really digging deep into making sure we are all on the same page of what the organization's mission vision was.
So when you say, gaps or holes in the board and kind of having to shift around things like that, elaborate on that a little bit. What does that mean to, close some of the gaps in a
Mhm.
board specifically?
So a lot of it's just looking at the matrix of the board, making sure we have the right people on the board. Do we have, enough of the community represented? Are the So like, like HR was not, I mean, one person executive director. So do we have somebody that has HR background? Are they on our board? Do we have an attorney? Do we have an accountant? All those things of that, especially when it's a small working board, is to make sure that we have committees that are strong and being led by strong volunteers, and just figuring out where those holes are, and then also just figuring out, who has a lot of influence financially in the community to make sure that we can get the funds that we need to do the work that was vital.
Hmm. And you talked a little bit about alignment with a board. Can you just speak to if everyone on the board has a little bit different perspective on what they think that the end desired result is for that organization, what does that do to the organization overall versus a board that has alignment on, we all know that this is what the end destination is going to be, and here's how we're going to get there?
Oh yeah, it's so important because if you don't have that alignment, you have a lot of different opinions, or you have it being communicated to the community differently. So then it doesn't make sense. And so your organization doesn't even look strong. And so to make sure that, everybody has the same, elevator seat speech, and everybody might be on there for a different reason, maybe, like some boards, if somebody, went through something. And so like we had a lot of people like, oh, I went in the United Way, and when I was younger, we used their services. And so having that piece, but also having them on there, not just for their resume, not just to say they are on the board of a certain organization, but to really find out their passion and where they stand in the mission and the vision. And if they don't align, it's okay to not have them on the board anymore.
And for this particular organization, how well known were they in the community at like when you first came on? Did they have much recognition? Did you have to do work kind of in that space as well to help people understand why the organization was important, why they should be funded? What was the landscape for, I don't know, call it brand awareness for that
Mhm.
particular organization?
It was known incorrectly, right? So there's four pieces of the organization that were really important: historic preservation, event, downtown events, economic development, and then just kind of the organization itself. And everybody just assumed it was just the event planner for the downtown. And so it was vital to get people to understand and to do projects that showed the historic preservation, or to get them involved and get the awareness. So yes, I did a lot of my free advertising, so to speak, lots of community awareness work. And just to get people to understand that, yes, we have this great Friday night event, M and we also are redoing these facades, and it's a huge program. And so, and economic development, bringing businesses downtown. So there was so much more to it. And so, yeah, it was um, definitely a community awareness. And a lot of that is, again, having the board all on the same page so that they could share that with the community and that their circles of influence.
Hmm. So then you move forward into the United Way. As you stated, a little bit better financial position. Still some issues with the board at the moment. Now you've got a team. kind of some different things that are going on with that organization. I would imagine, to at least some degree, kind of the brand awareness and knowing who and what the organization was a little bit better. I would imagine most people know what the United Way is in some way, shape, or form. So what were some of you talked a little bit about team building, you talked about kind of rebuilding the board, but talk a little bit more about what you had to do in that organization to grow it to the point where you were ready to move on from that one.
Yeah, that one was team, rebuilding the team and finding the right people, the right people on the bus and making sure that everybody had a clear vision of where we needed to go. And then a lot of it was rebuilding trust and rebuilding relationships, and getting the community to trust that we were good stewards of their investments in the organization. And so it was kind of a step by step of, let's get the team, let's take our board and grow our board. But, to get people on the board, they had to see some, positive movement forward. And so as we baby stepped our positive movement forward and, again, community awareness of what we were doing in the community was vital as well.
Hmm. When you look at, so that would sounds like that was kind of the main things to work through. Were there still some areas to improve upon from, I don't know, a financial standpoint, or just kind of re-clarifying some of the vision or destination of where the organization was headed, or just the general outreach of how they went about going out and raising the funding needed.
Mhm.
Was there a little bit of that work that was required to maybe fine tune from where it was when you started?
Yeah, and I think that that's always key because it's like there's always you look at all the processes and you try to figure out how you can make it more efficient and better. And the other piece that I guess I didn't even mention with the Main Street too is, when you have organizations that have associations or, connections throughout the state or throughout the nation, and you don't utilize what's right there in front of you to collaborate so you're not reinventing, um, that's crazy because there are a lot of really great state associations or, like national associations that you're a part of when you're in some of these nonprofits, and they can really provide feedback. They may have things that they've already discovered at another United Way or another Main Street community, and to have those conversations. I don't believe in inventing the wheel over and over again, right? I think that if you can find another organization that is similar to what you're doing, whether it's in your community or in a different state or whatever that looks like, you're wasting a lot of time if you're not um, stealing ideas. And, we share. Usually it's not like stealing, but yeah, it's crazy that the egos or, you feel, and a lot of this comes with age. I mean, I think that, Jodee at 21 was way different than Jodee at 57. Um, but yeah, I don't care where the idea came from. It doesn't matter. I don't need credit. I just want to make sure that the organization is healthy and strong and viable.
Hmm. Well, we have that culture point here at Action Coach that is abundance. It's where everybody gets to be raised up when people are doing well, and there's enough to go around for everybody. And I think there's a lot to be said about that in collaborating and sharing and being open, because when there's room for everybody to win. But I gotta say, I mean, this is really cool to be discussing these different pieces of nonprofits at different stages in really their life cycle. And we talk about call it more of a, I want to say an early stage. It's probably not the right word, but earlier stage, younger type of an organization like the Main Street versus maybe a little bit more of a mature organization like the United Way. And just like in business, we talk about the fundamental things that have to be done in any business, from understanding where you're going and having everybody aligned to is what we're doing, the delivery of what we're doing, consistent? Do we know our financials? How do we fix some of those things? Do we have do we have marketing out there that says, here's how we're going to go get, funding, and here's what makes us different. Here's all the things that we do. And then you look at something that's a little bit more mature, that you go a little bit deeper into what builds a great business. And it's you've got the foundation that still maybe needs some tweaks. It's the same things we just talked about, but then you can build upon it. You can build systems, you can build organization, you can build team at that point, because now there's stuff to actually build success upon. So it's really cool to see the parallels between the nonprofit world and the traditional business building world, because at the end of the day, the organization is still the same and still has to be profitable and be able to continue to self-sustain to be able to have the impact that's desired.
Yeah, I think the other piece of that too is change, right? I mean, people are afraid of change. And, I'm not saying that I came into any organization and was a better leader. They did what they needed to do to get the organization where it was. And so coming in and having that fresh set of eyes is always key if you're at that transition point. And I love, love, love change, and a lot of people don't. And so for me, it was always fun to say, to see how it was done before, honor that, and then say, hey, how can we improve on it? So, I think that's the other piece too. It's like you really just need to step back, and change is inevitable.
Hmm. The old, if you're not growing, you're dying. Growth and change are essentially the same thing. You got to apply some pressure, and it's not going to always be comfortable. But change does equate to growth most of the time. Hey there, real quick. If you haven't had the opportunity to like and subscribe here on YouTube, it would mean the world to us. We take the time to put out as many resources as possible to help you build and grow amazing businesses and nonprofit organizations. Once you finish up with this video, make sure that you click that subscribe button, hit the little bell for notifications, and be sure to follow all the amazing content here at Action Coach in Central Texas. So let's talk about change. The cool thing is, some really interesting stuff when it comes to building the organizations that you did back in Iowa, and then you shift down here to Texas, and you get to work with another United Way, another great team, and you do this crazy thing where you merge two United Ways together. Talk a little bit about that. Like, I guess I'm curious to know what things you saw in the organization when you joined it that immediately needed kind of some change in direction, and then where was that point when it said, why are we doing things separately? Let's merge these two entities together, even if it meant that you may not have a job after it's over, because it's good for the organization, it's good for the community, et cetera. So talk a little bit about that transition from kind of you coming on board, seeing the things that you saw, and leading into that transition into a merge.
Yeah, so when I came here, it was kind of interesting because it is such a amazingly growing, fast, crazy environment. And we were raising the same amount of money in Iowa with 124,000 people in 8 counties, and there was, I think it was only 550,000 when I came here, and was raising about 1 million. And so that was my question in my interview. And so then after I got the position, I could really, dig into what does that look like? What do we need to do? How can we grow? And then I got to know, again, I read, the state association and other United Ways in the area. And I, try to bounce ideas and have conversations. And so when I was meeting with David, the CEO from United Way for Greater Austin, and I was like, why are we not working closer together? Because we had so many intertwined corporate campaigns and so many events that were overlapping. And, some of that's just right time, right place, all the stars aligned. And it was like David was in his role and I was in mine, and we were open to it. And so having those conversations of what how can we make our United Way in Williamson County grow into the size it needs to meet the community needs? Because as you know, with, yes, it's great. We have a very healthy economic background here, but there's still a lot of need. There's a lot of mental health, a lot of homelessness, all of the things. And so and so I did the math, right? I started looking at, because there's great materials, there's great research that worldwide provides of, like, here's how many households, this is what the average household income is. Here's what here's the need. So it's like, here's the communities that really need the help. And so you start doing the math and it's like, we need to grow faster than we can. And so we started collaborating a lot more with Austin. And then it was just to the point where I was like, this just makes so much sense to all the back office, all of the corporate campaigns that, I'm running around to 20,000 HEBs. They're running around to 20,000 HEBs. And anybody not in Texas, that's the cult. It's a grocery store. And but yeah, it was just crazy. And so I met with Dave, and there was like a few other things that I was like, why are we not collaborating with, the health district? Or there's just it was just going back out there again and having those conversations of how we can work together and be better and be more efficient, because I'm all about being efficient. And so, yeah, we just kept having the conversations, and we started doing the math, and I started having conversations with the nonprofits we work with. And I had conversations with board members that, and it wasn't like it wasn't like the board said, oh yeah, that sounds great. It was, we don't want to lose our identity. And so it was like, we had to really look at what was going to be best and how can we better serve the communities that we're here for. And so, yeah, after about 18 months of really having those conversations and digging in deep and putting it all together, it became one, um, January 1st of 2022. And so then I was like, okay, I'm tired. I'm exhausted.
So yeah, I imagine people are a huge component of a merge of two different entities, whether it's team or in the nonprofit space, it's team and its board. Um, as a leader, how did you manage the dynamics of merging two teams together?
Yeah, we were also blessed to have we had help with a facilitator, which at the time, now I could, like, oh yeah, that'd be great. To help us talk through the team and really make sure all of their concerns were always addressed, right? Always having very open conversations on both, David was having his with his team in Austin, and I was having mine with, you know, our team in Williamson County, and bringing them together, getting them to work together, and making sure that we all understood the mission was the same between the two organizations. And we just, we maybe said a word differently here and there, but it was like, why are you in your position? And like with the boards, why are you on the board? And getting them all aligned and getting them to understand. And you know what? And some did not want to stay on, and that's fine. You're going to have the shifts again. That goes back to change. And but in the long run, it was what was right for the community, and was right for the organization. And it was painful for some, and it still is in progress, right? I mean, I still have conversations with them, and we still talk about the transition, and there's still some, some work to be done. It's not an overnight thing. It's 3 to 5 years to really have it so it's a solid regional organization.
Mm. So I'm curious, as you look towards the future and you look towards we'll just say the industry of nonprofits. Um, where do you see things in the next 3 to 5 years? What do you think nonprofits need to be paying attention to right now that they can prepare for, be ready for as we kind of look to the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it goes back to really understanding the financials and understanding that they need to have some kind of reserve and being as efficient as possible. Looking where they can collaborate. We know that the economy is crazy and donors are going to get stingier with their investments because they don't have the option to give as much, maybe. So we know revenue is going to drop, and so it's key to be able to work together to find um, those that align with what you do and who you're serving to make sure that the services don't go away. Because, like I said, if the economy's not as good, you're going to have more people needing the services. And as we know, mental health is crazy right now. I mean, it's just so sad. And so the services are growing and the funding is dropping.
Mm,
So it's to really get a good handle on where you're at now, have your finances, have your board, have your mission, have everything aligned, and really look for those that you can collaborate with. And um, because there's some that won't make it.
mm.
There's some that are starting a nonprofit because they didn't like the way, Billy and Bob did it, and so they thought they could do it better. It's like, yeah, that's just another way to pull funding from someone that's doing a great job.
Ooh, that's an interesting piece that probably is often overlooked. Um, Creating other nonprofits and starting up foundations and taking that pool of funding that's available and splitting it between more so that nobody has as big of an impact as they could. Do you think we'll see more merging of entities just in general?
I think so. I think I've had a few conversations with different nonprofits that kind of do the same thing. And I think that everybody's been very territorial, and they're starting to understand that for the greater good, they're going to have to look at working together, whether it's just collaboration, complete mergers. Um, it's starting with even having a management agreement where maybe one of the nonprofits is doing the management of the others, but they don't get eaten up necessarily. So there's different ways to collaborate without a full blown merge. And I do believe that it's key in today's economy in the next 5 years that we just have got to get it figured out because the needs are going to be there.
Very cool. Well, as we kind of wrap up the conversation today, I've got I want to do some call them rapid fire questions that I think will be really cool for nonprofits specifically out there. So, what do you think the key to success is, or kind of the quick answer key to success for nonprofits to build successful nonprofits? What do you think the key to success is?
Alignment, and not it's not someone's organization, it's the community's organization, and to always keep that in mind.
Hmm. What's a piece of advice that you would give to CEOs and executive directors of nonprofits?
Drop your ego and just do have conversations and meet other nonprofits and learn and continue to learn and learn some more and know your finances.
I didn't give you any prep for this one, so we'll see if you can think of one off the top of your head. What's one book recommendation that you would recommend for nonprofits?
Oh, that's good. That's good. Ooh, like,
Doesn't have to be the one. It can be just
pretty good.
a good recommendation. We can give out more recommendations on another conversation. What's a good one to get started with?
You know, I'm terrible at book names. So I have to think about what they're actually called instead of just what's in my head. So probably the 7 habits.
7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yes. Yeah. I think that, yeah, that one
Yeah.
I think would be, it's just basic, right? It's
Mm,
just basic and it helps with time management. And that is a huge downfall for nonprofits. Burnout is
mm.
so common. And um, so, yeah, just learning how to uh, function without burnout.
Awesome. Well, I think that kind of wraps up the conversation for today. If you're new to the channel, you're just you're checking out all of this. You're a nonprofit, or you know a nonprofit out there who is continuing to grow and expand and soak up as much knowledge as they can. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel here at Action Coach in Central Texas. We've got a nonprofit channel here that we're just going to continue to have conversations, talk about different things that are working in nonprofits, and continue to provide some of the tools and resources necessary to grow your nonprofit, grow your organization, and have more impact in the community that you serve. So with that, Jodee, thanks for having the conversation and chatting a little bit about your background and helping us, paint a little bit of a picture of all the amazing things that you've accomplished.
Oh, well, thank you. It's been fun.